Today, Grade.com talks with Nathan Smith, who is the Director of Community Engagement at the Phoenix Rescue Mission. If you've not heard of them, they are a leading provider of Christ-centered, life-transforming solutions to persons facing hunger, homelessness, addiction, and trauma. If you're new here to the podcast, please press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we're going to learn more about not only what we can do to transform ourselves, but what we can do to transform our cities. Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Are we live right now?
We're live.
All right. Awesome. It's good to be here, Joshua. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. And we chatted a little bit offline, and a kindred spirit. I'm excited, more excited to be able to chat with you, man. For the folks that have not done sort of the double click on what you have going on, the business itself, can you share a bit about Phoenix Rescue Mission, just what you guys have going on today, a little bit about the mission itself, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So Phoenix Rescue Mission is, as you mentioned, an agency. We're faith-based. We exist to serve people who are facing hunger, homelessness, addiction, and trauma, like you said there. And what that means for us is we're about really trying to help solve these problems for the individuals who come our way. And so, for instance, for people who are experiencing homelessness, we're not just trying to engage with them in a way that creates relationship, although that is absolutely a huge part of what we're doing. But we're trying to connect that to something that's going to help them permanently exit homelessness. So for us, we're about connecting people to deeper levels of resource to really solve the problems they're experiencing. So around homelessness, when we talk about addiction, we offer a 12-month addiction recovery program. People can actually elect to stay in there for up to 24 months. And then after they graduate and move off of our campuses, we continue to engage with them. So we really are about going in depth with people who are facing these issues and helping them to solve these problems.
Can you, obviously I want to talk a bit about the challenges and maybe even how they've gotten there. But before I do that, can you share a bit about maybe your target, for lack of a better term, demographic? Are you going after a specific type of person? Maybe you only work with women and children, or people in the Maricopa County, or just talk to me about who you're targeting, who you're going after.
Yeah, so the way Phoenix Rescue Mission's programs and services are broken down is we really have two big buckets of service area. We have non-residential services for people who are not living on one of our residential campuses, and then we have residential services. So in the non-residential side, we're going to have three key target populations. We have people who are facing food insecurity. So that we offer a food bank out in one of our suburban cities, the city of Glendale, and people can come to that food bank. In the middle of COVID, we were getting over 200 households per day. Wow. That's numbers hovering around about 100 households a day. They come 5 days a week, and we give them big grocery carts worth of food. In that program, we have case management that is really trying to help them look deeper. And then we wrap workforce development, because one of the things that we found with that is that a lot of the people who are facing food insecurity were often doing so because they were underemployed or unemployed. And so our workforce development program that supports our residential programs is out there supporting that group too. So we have people facing food insecurity. On our non-residential side, we also have people who are facing homelessness, like we talked about before. And then within that, we also have people who are justice involved, as we call it. And so a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness or addiction also are engaging repeatedly with the criminal justice system. There's that tie-in there. And so it's a vicious cycle where one can continue to reinforce the other, and you stay stuck in both. And so we go into the courts, we help the people that we're working with set plea agreements and really use a service plan to exit both homelessness and criminal justice system instead of facing enhanced prosecution for crimes associated with homelessness. So we're really working with people who are justice involved, homeless, and food insecure on the non-residential side. And then on the residential side, our target population, we'll call people facing life controlling problems. We use trauma as kind of a catch-all for that. People who've had experiences that have led them into addiction, that have led them into any number of different kinds of addiction, food addiction, we have gambling addictions, we have sex addictions, we have for sure opiate and other drug addictions, alcohol. And so there's root causes of those things. And so our target population is those people who are facing the trauma that have led to these addictions and other life controlling problems.
Yeah, that was going to be, and it's super interesting. That was going to be my question. And I feel myself wanting to tread lightly on, when you're in your own city or you're traveling and you see some sort of panhandler or someone asking for money, I think often your mind jumps to the idea of like, I'd love to help, but if I give them money or if I help, it's going to go to drugs or it's going to go to this, right? Like I think people have this, they just immediately jump to that conclusion. And that was going to be my follow-up question to you is, as you assist people and work with the homeless or the hungry, do you have some sort of criteria of they cannot have drugs in their system or they can't have a criminal background or things like that? And I kind of heard in your answer there, it's the opposite. We're seeking those people out and we're not just trying to slap a Band-Aid on the problem, but we're going to attach ourselves to them for 12, 18, 24 months and go to the root of this problem. And we're going to try to solve them from the inside out versus the outside in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about it is the way we approach these situations with people is going to be highly individualized. And so what an individual needs is what we're going to really try to focus on. Also, it's going to be based on, as far as Phoenix Rescue Mission is concerned, which programs they're engaging in. So if you're going to come into our residential addiction recovery program, we're going to drug test you and make sure that you're staying motivated to continue to work toward not just sobriety, but holistic recovery, which includes sobriety. So in that case, there's going to be more rules. We're going to be a bit more stringent. And I would say the thing that we're looking for is someone who has, at the very least, a spark of motivation and is willing to see that through. And that motivation can come externally, right? So the courts have mandated them to come to some program. Sure. And now they're here. And they're like, fine, I'm going to work it because the courts are making me. That will work with that. It's not our favorite, but we oftentimes find that people find other motivations for seeking recovery once they get to engage in it. Now, if you're talking about our homeless outreach program, because some of the stuff that we offer, so one of our programs is homeless outreach on the non-residential side. Now, on that side, we're going to people who are in the streets, who are in these encampments. They're the kind of the folks that you're seeing who haven't yet decided or may not ever decide for any number of reasons to come into one of our more intensive residential programs. So with them, we're going to very, very, very much individualize our approach, right? So we have to think about, is this person going to go immediately into housing from their living on the street situation? Are they going to go into shelter for a little while first and things like that? And so we have to really kind of navigate that a bit differently. And there it's very much meet them where they're at. We teach the case managers and the outreach side, especially, but all over, is to have a non-threatening, non-judgmental approach, knowing that you bring resource and some level of higher status to this relationship and to intentionally bring that down so that we can spark that motivation with those folks here so that maybe they want to come into recovery or at least stay permanently in the housing. And the last thing I'll say on that is when we put them into housing, one beef that we have at the mission about the way a lot of programs across the country, really across the world, have done this is they put people into housing and then don't invest in the resources to help them sustain that housing solution. And so what we'll do is our case managers, once they place people there, they will continue to follow up with them in kind of an aftercare component to make sure that they remain stable, because these folks fall out of housing for any number of reasons all the time. So yeah, ours is very much meet people where they're at, but as they engage more deeply, we do give greater expectations.
Got it. Super, super helpful. And it's good to hear about the, bi-weekly, monthly cadence. Once we've got them in a system, I mean, just like anything, right? Dieting, exercising, whatever it is, you try to right size your path. You try to go down the right path and you get 30, 60 days in, and for lack of a better term, you relapse or you go back to your old habits. And it's nice to have someone come back over the top there every 30, 60 days and say, hey, check, just a temperature check. How are things going? Where are you at? Here's some advice. Here's some continued direction. Can you double click on the challenge a bit? I mean, you've been there, I think, if my homework serves me right, a little over 7-ish years, a couple different roles of project management, director level now. You've been boots on the ground and been able to communicate with, help, assist, chat with many, many homeless, hungry in the area. I want to talk maybe about how they've gotten to that point. First, just a quick note on scale that I pulled from your website. There are 36,000-ish homeless people in the state of Arizona. Maricopa County has 61% of Arizona's population, 71% of the state's homeless population. So you've met with these folks, you've been boots on the ground. What are some of the more common reasons or stories? How are people getting to this point, if that question makes sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it does. Man, so I think of it, again, these situations are very individual. And one of the things I like to point out is when you're driving down the street, you see a visual picture of somebody experiencing homelessness. And normally it's not like a great picture. I always ask people, when you think of homelessness, what do you think of? And almost invariably, we far more negative responses, sometimes no positive statements. I have to add things like potential, history, personal experience, and things like that. So let's say you're looking at this typical, 45-year-old person experiencing homelessness, and they look a little bit run down and grungy and things like that. It's easy to form more than just a picture, but even some thoughts and stereotypes in your mind. And what I like to point out is what we at the mission are looking at is what got that person to that place. When we're talking about challenges, we got to go all the way back in history. And when you work in this game, one of the things you realize is like a lot of people were doomed, right? So you'll have people who, before they were ever born, they were addicted to drugs. That puts you at a step further back than, say, I experienced when, I was born in the early 80s. So like my mom smoked some cigarettes or something like that, but that's about it. And then, you have people who then once they're born, their living situation, their home environment is all over the place. And so by the time you're 5, brain scientists say that 90% of your brain architecture is basically set at that point. And so you've experienced in the womb and up through 5 years old, all this trauma. The first time you do drugs is with either a parent or a loved one, say at the age of 12 as a preteen, drop out of high school. And then we look at you at the age of 45 and we're forming these stereotypes. And in some ways they're true, but when we say at Phoenix Rescue Mission, one of our things that we're worried about is trauma. We're going all the way back into that history, trying to unpack how this person got to that point. And so those are a lot of challenges embedded in how people form these experiences that land them in addiction and homelessness. Very concretely, though, someone loses they already have a bunch of anxiety and maybe tend toward depression, and then they lose their family in a car accident. They lose their job. They off and on with addiction, maybe because they have a genetic predisposition to addiction, and never learn the kind of emotional intelligence and social skills that a lot of us pick up on in healthy households. And again, there's all these reasons why you become homeless. And then you have the macroeconomic factors that are huge and everyone's always on about. Housing is too expensive. It's getting worse in Maricopa County. We are booming and have been for a long time. That prices people out of the market. And there's just the lowest wage jobs are not sustainable for the housing market. And so between those macro and micro factors, we find ourselves, really working hard to try to solve this problem that keeps growing.
Yeah. And how hard is that, right? Hard is maybe not the right word. I think if for someone that does not make the conscious effort of what you just talked about, to not draw conclusions and have those stereotypes and see, 5, 6, 8 tenths tied off to one another and immediately jump to a conclusion and feel a certain type of way about what you're looking at, and being able to peel back the layers and start to think about the money scripts, the emotional scripts, the psychological scripts that have been put in place with them to get them to that point, right? Lots of time, 98% of the time, it's not laziness. They didn't walk out of the house and decide, you know what, I'm going to let everything just go kaput and I'm going to camp out here, right? That's typically not how this thing has gone. And things have, you said, out of the womb, they were put behind the curve and they've been fighting to get ahead of this. Let's talk about how they get ahead of it, or at least how you get them there or assist in getting folks there. I saw 8 or 9 different solutions, programs on your website, and I want to give you the chance to share a bit about your approach to this challenge, and then maybe a bit about what your organization do to combat and overcome it, right? We talked about the food banks, we talked about the Men's Transformation Center and the Women and Children's Transformation Center. Share a bit about just what you guys are doing, some of those programs, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we operate on a continuum. So our program, that's why I mentioned we have like non-residential and then residential services, and they basically sort of intensify as you go on. So and they connect. Like a lot of our people who get into our residential programs come from our non-residential side. So our homeless outreach team is really trying to plug people in there. But if that's not a fit for them, then we're going to plug them in all over. So into maybe some other resources that are more suitable for their needs and goals. So for us, it's first and foremost about having a continuum of service. As people engage here, we have the next thing for them to go through. So we can get you from outreach into, if you're going into housing, then fine, we'll continue with you in housing. But if you come into our residential program, then we'll work with you in depth there. And after you graduate, we have aftercare to continue to work with you. So the first thing I'd say is that we have that continuum of service. But then we also have a level of expectation. So while I'll mention that there are these things that almost doom people, it's almost inevitable that they're going to grow with some pretty serious problems. We don't let them wallow in that. So in our recovery program, it's like, hey, yes, and the world's not apologizing. They still see you as that 45-year-old bum on the street corner. And the world still has expectations of you. And you have kids and an estranged wife. And so there are these things that we really need to do. The justice system doesn't care about the story. You have to turn your life around. And so we teach, we educate. We'll have people in our residential program. They're in class 2 hours a day, 5 days a week in group sessions. They get one-on-one counseling with a counselor that we'll have on staff that's overseen by licensed clinical supervisors. And we're really trying to take a psychoeducational approach mixed with the fact that we're Jesus lovers. And so we have a very faith-based component to what we do, but we're very scientific and evidence-based as well. And so we're really trying to dig that out and let people know that change is going to be required of them, or their situation is going to worsen. They're going to spend their lives in jail, or they're going to die, and they're going to hurt the people that love them most. And so that now, but if you go backwards, and like I was talking about our homeless outreach program, another thing that I'll say is not only do we have a continuum and do we stress accountability, but one of the last component I'll say is we thread the empowerment model through everything that we do. So instead of, it's a basic, you hear this all the time, it's not a handout, it's a hand up, right? It's the idea that we can help you grow from where you are to something more, whatever that more is. And we have to resource accordingly. So that's why we don't just have outreach workers, we have navigators or case managers who will help drive people to a housing to look for different apartments or drive them to their job interviews. We'll pay for, through the graciousness of our donors and funders, we'll pay for ID vouchers, bus pass vouchers for people who are living on the street. So not only do we do that on a residential side, but for people who are all across the streets of Maricopa County that are several vans are driving out to on a daily basis in all these suburban cities, we're helping them get their IDs and get resourced accordingly. We'll pay for down payments or security deposits on housing solutions and things like that, and then make sure that they have the resources they need to get in there. And then the expectation is that if we're working way harder than you, we're going to start to pull back, but we'll always be available. And so again, it's about empowerment. Where can we go from we help you lightly to we help you more and more and more, and what resources are required to do that? Even on the food bank side, we thread the empowerment model through. We once just gave out food. People just came and they got food bags and then they left and we high-fived. It was great. We loved them. But now we hire a case manager and put our workforce development program in there. So if you say, I want to get my high school diploma or my GED, we have a computer bank right there that you can go and access on a 5 days a week basis and work toward getting your high school diploma or GED. We have upskills job workshop classes, and we're offering that not only in our residential programs, but the people in the food bank and people coming through street outreach, because again, that empowerment model is huge for us. So we offer that continuum so that we can continue to move people as they progress in motivation, but we have accountability and expectation that people do what they're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, the goal is not just to help people where they are, but to empower them to something greater.
Mm. Do you find once you've helped, I find some of the best stories that we learn about professional athletes, artists, singer, whatever it is. Some of the best stories come from folks that have had those aggressive, rigorous, treacherous scripts that we're talking about. They've come from really hard pasts and they've taken a rough journey, and then they get through the rigor, they get through the hardship. And they break through this, they sort of break through the surface of it. And when they get to their side, they become great, right? And they become something even better. And I'm curious if you've been able to experience that switch within the folks that you work with. I mean, you're going to folks that have really dealt with some of the hardest times in their lives, right? Sometimes it's like you mentioned, right out of the womb, they were born homeless. They were born with addictions or in a really bad spot. Other times, maybe it happened when they're 20, 25 years old, but they hit rock bottom and they get to a deep, dark place. And then you guys come in and you're not just giving them a handout of here's some food, good luck, and I'm going to take you inside and shave you up. But you've gotten 12, 24 months to pull at their emotions and bring God into this equation and put put his light inside of them and start to help them see a bigger picture. And it's a different approach to the typical homeless outreach that I've seen. And I'm curious if you've been able to experience any breakthroughs, people where they have that moment where they get through that, they break through the surface, and on the other side, they do become great and they start to pursue things. Maybe they get involved with your organization, or they go into leadership, or they go. Have you experienced things like that?
Yeah, in so many ways and on so many levels. So we have a lot of really intense turnaround stories, like a lot of them. And then we have some lighter ones. So on the lighter side, one of my favorite things is a lady, once upon a time, she came to our food bank and was in need of our service there for a long time. And then worked with our case management team, ended up getting a better job than she had before, and then came back to volunteer more regularly at the food bank. And so it's like, how intense is that turnaround? I mean, she got a job and then she started volunteering with us. And so it's great.
On paper, it doesn't sound intense, but from their shoes, I mean, the life swing that they just saw, it's the most intense. It's a life transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing for her and for people in situations like that.
Incredible.
And for the people that she knows who are hearing her story, we have folks on like the outreach side who will. We offer this program called the Will Work program. It's actually really neat. The program is basically like a homeless outreach plus day labor service program. So we get contracts to offer to do job projects usually for cities, right? So for the city of Glendale, it's right outside of the city of Phoenix, we have folks working in city parks. In the city of Scottsdale, they make bricks for housing projects. They're homeless individuals from those cities that we pay a minimum wage. So here in Arizona, it's $12 an hour. For 5 hours, we'll pay them cash at $60 at the end of the day for working these projects. So it cleans up parks, where it makes these bricks for buildings for the cities. But it also gives them an opportunity to work and to gain some motivations and confidence out of that, and get some cash so they can hopefully do the right thing with it. We recognize not always will they, but oftentimes people use that to do the right thing. So like, for instance, we have a guy who used that to save up some money to start buying some work clothes, got on the job interview scene, and then was able to land himself a job and get back into housing. And so really turned himself around. But the favorite stories honestly come out of the residential recovery program, our transformations program. That's where people come to us in the worst situations. They have been in and out of jail or prison. They've been addicted for the majority of their lives. And they've experienced tons and tons of homelessness. And I can tell you right now that I have I have so many people, because we hire peers intentionally. We have a peer model. So many people, but one guy pops into my mind in particular. because he and I were out doing outreach one time, and this was actually, so I used to actually be our director of community engagement. Now I'm our fancy chief program officer. But when I was director of community engagement, he and I were working closely together, and we were out and doing some outreach, and I was just kind of spending some time with him. And I was trying to talk to this guy and really try to, help him get out of the situation because the cops were going to come close down his encampment. And this guy, Richie, so when I first met Richie was a month, or his name's not Richie, actually, it's just a fake name. But when I first met him, he was early into our recovery program. And then looked down the road sometime later, and he is now 5 years clean. And he and I are out here doing outreach. I'm trying to talk to this guy. It's not working. So Richie comes in and says, "Hey man, I've been where you are. I have the tracks in my arms. You can see them right now. These scars are not going anywhere. I know how you feel." I can't say that because I've never been in that situation. But he can. And then just to be able to connect with him on that level, to basically call BS and to say, "Hey bro, like I know how this goes.
Yeah. And
I know you want better." And so just to see him come and do that, and then to watch him promote up the ranks at Phoenix Rescue Mission too. We have people who once were in prison and now are supervisors, and directors even. So yeah, man, great turnaround stories. I could go on and on and on, and it's on the women's side too, because the women sometimes come to us with their children. So we have children's stories where they come into us a mess from the trauma of going through things with their parents. And they come into our program with their parents. And now the kids are an entirely different path as well, and their moms, and they're reunifying. So I could go on and on and on, man. It's amazing how many stories we have like that.
Talk to me about, I feel like this is a good opportunity for me to plug. Let's say someone wants to have a similar impact. They'd like to be involved. I kind of see this twofold. Those that are local to you that can be involved with boots on ground, with their own time or with resources, than those that the rest of the U.S. or other countries. I mean, for folks that tune into this, they're inspired. They want to have an impact. They want to be involved in your mission, or maybe just in their own city, start to have an impact. Talk to me about those two avenues. How can people get involved?
Yeah. So here locally, I'll start there. If you want to get involved locally, reach out to organizations that do the kind of work that we do. Find what you're interested in. So I think it's a matter of first and foremost doing some combination of research as to what's going on out there, and then also some soul searching as to what you're passionate about. How that intersects with the needs that are out there, your skills and experiences, the opportunities that are presenting themselves, and then at that intersection, you'll kind of find your purpose, and then go out there and then see what exists that fits with that. And in many cases, that can be Phoenix Rescue Mission. And so we have a volunteers, prm.volunteerhub.com, that people can go to and just see what we're doing right now and how they can plug in. And some of them are very in-depth opportunities like mentoring, or teaching class and things like that, tutoring. And some of them are just, lighter touch, like helping out with serving a meal or working in the food bank or something like that. So look at us, look at other agencies that are like that. And I would say, thinking of outside of here, the way I started is how I would end, which is find what that purpose is, and where you fit. And there's so many groups doing so much work that you just really got to reach out and see where you can get involved. And then from there, you start to, it can evolve. People start, I started volunteering, and now I'm, working full-time in a nonprofit for 7 years now. And that was never my intention to do that. And so you see how the situation evolves, but it's a matter of doing some research for yourself first, for what's out there, and then taking that step and making that phone call.
All of the links that we've discussed will be linked in our show notes and the blog post that we've shared. I love your journey, what you guys have going on. It was an honor to be a part of this for 30, 40 minutes. I would encourage the folks that have tuned in to get involved. I mean, if it's with this organization, we talked offline, it's supposed to be 117 degrees there today. You don't want to be outside for more than 12 minutes. And the idea that folks are really pushing it out there is incredible. Women, children, men, it doesn't matter. It's hot, and folks are hungry. Folks are struggling, and those that are capable, those that are able, and that feel the need to get involved. really appreciate your time, man. This was a fantastic conversation. And I love the organization. I love what you have going on.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. I appreciate the opportunity again to just share about what we do and to have this opportunity to talk to your viewers. And, thanks for bringing us on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. That will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation, so more people can learn about the importance of the little things and how little movements, little actions that you take can literally transform the lives of others.